Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here to talk about Muv-Luv Alternative. So, I finished this morning, mainly because I couldn't sleep. My bed is actually quite terrible right now and I'm not sure why. But I do apologize for any, just lethargy in this general video, but I honestly don't have any other time to get this done. And I also apologize for potential spoilers. Now, I'm not going to spoil the main game of Alternative. I might have to go a little bit into Unlimited. And at the end of this video, I will be talking about the Epilogue. And the Epilogue just kind of, gives you the general idea of what happened in the plot anyway. I'm not going to go too deep into it. But that's your warning. You're not going to remain completely and utterly unspoiled as to what's going on here. And that's pretty much it, so we might as well just get on to the actual rant side of the video then. People were getting annoyed at me that I called the other rants short rants, despite the fact they were 20 minutes long, and I'm like, those are short rants for me, god damn it. Well, let's actually get into this one. Hopefully this one will be a lot longer, mainly because I've got like 40 lines of script to go through. I literally wrote out a script for myself this time, so hopefully we'll, have something that I won't have to put a short rant in front of. I could just put a rant. But anyway, I played through the game pretty quickly. Now, I did do the same thing I did with Muv-Luv and Muv-Luv Unlimited, which is I went through the games mostly not listening to the voice acting. I stopped and listened at points because there are points where they kind of expect you to. They just freeze you and more or less make you watch like a 5-minute movie. It's a little odd, but I'll get onto that. And we get about, by we I mean me. I got about 20 to 25 hours out of it, but that was at like breakneck pace. So yeah, if you wanted to go through this game slowly, and to be fair, I'd recommend that you do, because everything about this game feels like a big step up from Muv-Luv and Muv-Luv Unlimited, so I will give them a lot of credit in that it made me want to go through slowly a bit, and sometimes it does actually make you do that, but yeah, I got through around 25 to 30. Now that's minimum. That is absolute minimum. I could not have gone any faster without outright skipping lines. So this game is actually pretty damn long. It's still a good 25 to 30 hours, and that makes the entire saga about 50 at maximum speed. So it's definitely one of the longer franchises on Vita. I think Utawara Ramono beats it out, but at the same time, it's long. It's also quite linear. Funnily enough, it is actually the most linear game in the entire series. As far as I can tell, the plot is exactly the same right down to the very end, except for like a couple of extra scenes on there, just stabbed on the end there. And it's actually an interesting way of going about things, mainly because Muv-Luv and Muv-Luv Unlimited, because they actually have branching endings. So, you have Muv-Luv and you have Muv-Luv Unlimited where you can pick your lover. This doesn't work in this game. The plot is mainly about Sumiko and Takaru, aka Aho Girl and generic anime protagonist. So you generally do have to keep that in mind as you're going in. There'll be no getting with Ayamine or Chizuru or whatever. There is something coming along the line for people who actually want that, but we'll get onto that later on after the epilogue. So yeah, it's very linear. You do get a few choices here and there, but it will go down roughly the same path nonetheless. And it does actually do a good job of explaining why that's actually a thing. It's in plot, I don't want to call it a contrivance, but the word for it that paints it in a positive light, the explanation for it is reasonable enough. Just worth noting that you're in for the ride. You're on the roller coaster. There's no real branching path effects. Maybe you can pick like one character that you like and, go along with that. But other than that, you'll be fine. So the beginning actually does feel very familiar, mainly because the first couple of episodes in the game, and for whatever bloody reason, they've stuck with the episode thing, because they did it in the last game, and there it made some sort of sense, although it had a little bit of a weird inconsistency going on. This game is thoroughly inconsistent. The first few episodes are actually really short, and then the last few episodes are really long. The episodes just get longer as they go along. The episodes start to feel more like movies, and I'm not entirely sure why that's a thing, but that is indeed a thing. So, yeah, they should have just dropped the whole episode thing, or even, made them smaller, but whatever. So, yeah, as I was saying, the entire thing feels very familiar in comparison to like Unlimited, because you do go through the initial set of events from Unlimited that you did before, but things get changed up. For those of you who don't know the plot, I'll try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible. So you've got Muv-Luv, which is Takaru in his regular old high school anime bloody harem life. Then you've got Muv-Luv Unlimited, which has that Takaru being transported into a world where he ends up having to join the army against the Beta, which is basically a gigantic ravenous species of alien that's destroying everything in their path. And then you've got Muv-Luv Alternative, which, not to put too fine a point on it, but he basically gets the opportunity to go back and try again, which is a really nice little thing, actually. It's not something you see in these sorts of things, like being able to go through the old plot. At the same time, some people might actually get a little bit frustrated having to go through all the old stuff, but at the same time, they do actually change some things up a bit. Some things play out exactly as they did before, some things play out completely differently, and you'll know immediately when some stuff starts going different, because if you remember Unlimited, like I did, because I had played through Unlimited literally like the night before, so I remembered, you'll notice that things will be off like almost right off the bat, and it's actually kind of amazing how far ahead they thought, but we'll get to that. The downside to it, though, is that it takes a while to get going, and the main turning point of the game is after everything from Unlimited has more or less been done, dusted, and finished. So when you're going through the Unlimited stuff, you won't be particularly entertained, but I just want to point out that that is the final hump, because, yeah, it's that point is where everything starts to focus. After you have been through everything in relation to Unlimited, you will be able to go straight into the really good stuff. And when I say that the game takes a massive uptick after the events of Unlimited are dealt with, I am not joking. It goes straight up. So to not put too much of an idea, not really give you too much of an idea, so, you know, no spoilers or anything, but there is some political trickery that's going on. You have a little bit of a hint that it's going to happen towards it actually happening, but you're actually focused on something else at the time. And then by the time you actually get around to it, yes, shit starts going down. And this is probably one of the best points in the game. Like, there's a lot of the best points in the game in this game. In fact, the entire second half of this game is probably the best point of this game. But yeah, anyway, the thing is, it just goes to show how far they thought ahead. I'm going to keep bringing this up a lot because it really does happen a lot, but the whole political chicanery that's going on around Chapter 5 or 6, I can't remember exactly which one it was, and I apologize for that, but that is where the character development really starts coming into its own. Like, it goes massively into detail about every character, who they are, what they're doing, how they would go about it. And there are a lot of different situations that pop up just along that chapter, which gives every character an opportunity to have their own voice, have their actions makes a certain amount of sense, and the development from Muv-Luv Extra and Muv-Luv Unlimited really comes into its own here. You can tell what these characters are acting like, you can actually give a shit about what they think and why they think it, and it all is in the perfect framing context of Extra and Unlimited, and it works amazingly. Like, seriously, I didn't feel like a single character in this game after the second half of the game was acting even remotely off character. I mean, it's not like they were, like, actively acting out of character before this point, but it's after this point that shows it. And you just get this massive clusterfuck of stuff going on that they managed to keep 100% straight, and it's actually really, really good. Like, I am actually really impressed with just how well it manages to bring its characters into this really complicated situation without, you know, screwing it up. And it is actually very, very impressive. And they've even all got a stake in the situation, which makes things interesting. But the weird thing is, the political stakes in the matter actually disappear after this point. It's a little weird. They just kind of vanish. Like, they do get away with explaining it in the story, and one thing that I do have to point out about this game is that it is really good at covering its ass. Like, I know I say that like it sounds bad, but it isn't really. I mean, it goes to show that just how far they thought ahead. They are basically just cutting off plot hole after plot hole after plot hole right after something happens. And they do it in... Well, it's not exactly efficient. They have a lot of text in this game, but at the same time, they work through a lot of the plot holes. And every time that you think it's going to go down a bit because of some unexplained thing, they tend to bring it back up by immediately explaining what was going on behind it afterwards, which is pretty damn good. And yeah, it is actually really good at that overall. And while that is an interesting side of things, with the whole political chicanery and all that, the real game starts right after that. The real game right there. Everything goes to hell immediately after that political chicanery stuff. While Unlimited and the first half of Alternative have a little bit of trouble figuring out the whole how do we make the beta appear immediately threatening thing, by the time episode 7 rolls around, they will absolutely be a believable threat. They get around to some really bad shit, especially after that point in the game, and you can tell that they are basically just bearing down. Like, when you were playing Unlimited, the most you got out of them was like a silhouette and Takaru having like a sort of miniature panic attack whenever they were being brought up. You didn't actually see them, but in this game you actually do see them. You actually do see them having an effect, and it's kind of unfortunate because their art design is kind of arse. Now, they look absolutely weird. They look incredibly weird. They don't look anything remotely human or even terrestrial, right? There are no animals on this earth you could compare them to other than to say like a bloody Rhydon from Pokemon. I know that's based off a kind of dinosaur. And a bloody scorpion. I mean, the base ones, though, aren't comparable to anything in particular. And they are absolutely frightening. It's just kind of toned down by the fact that they have these weird little animations that play several times throughout the game, and it looks ridiculous every single time they move relatively quickly. And it's just... it's absolutely silly. It makes me laugh every time I see it, which is kind of unfortunate. Because they really are a bloody threat. They are a massive goddamn threat, and the second half of the game rams it home repeatedly, but at the same time, it's just so weird when you see them moving around in such a weird way. While I'm here, I might as well talk about the graphical fidelity, and it's a little bit strange. It's a notable step up. The art looks a bit better. I think they gave it all a little bit of a tune-up. I mean, I think it's immediately obvious if you play the two games side by side that there are just these minor little touch-ups that they made, and the entire game overall just looks better for it. But yeah, there are also some other things going on. Like, they have these like 3D rendered areas at points. Like, it's not 3D, but it's obvious that they're going for like some kind of 3D rendering with flat sprites and all that, and it kind of looks 3D at points, and it is a really impressive set of effects, and they'll even pop out some pre-rendered 3D scenes at points. And as I said before, they do these like 5-minute movies where you can't actually move it forward by tapping on the screen or pressing the button, and it means that you just have to kind of sit there and watch, and they actually make it all look really good. They do a great job in taking advantage of what they have and using it to make it look really nice and really presentable. So, you know, good on them. They did a really good job on making it work. There are just some weird things about it. Like, for example, it's used sparingly. Like, all the really fancy stuff that isn't like 2D sprites of like character portraits on a background, anything that isn't that is used really sparingly. And sometimes it looks great, and sometimes you just wonder why they bothered. Like, there's one scene where it's atmospheric re-entry. Now, that's not much of a spoiler in all honesty. But yeah, there's an atmospheric re-entry scene where you get to sit in a shuttle and watch him go down to Earth. And it looks great. Like, it does a really good job at just presenting that general thing there. But then you've got something like infiltrating a hive where they're just walking down this weird tunnel, and it makes you think, why did they bother putting in the effort to make this work? It just seems unnecessary. But that doesn't happen nearly as much as the really nice looking stuff like the atmospheric re-entry scene. So yeah, it does look good. Like, it looks pretty good. I mean, it doesn't beat out like Utawara Ramono's absolute class and just amazing background work. And it doesn't beat, like, the... Well, I mean, I guess you could argue that it does kind of beat, like, Virtue's Last Reward with the 3D backgrounds and all that, but at the same time, yeah, it's just a little odd. It looks nice, though, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's absolutely fine the way it is. It's just odd. I thought I'd bring that up, because you want this rant video to be longer, probably. So I guess we'll get back onto the main plot. It's interesting to watch Takaru, our main character, develop as a character. He can be relied on to go into every individual argument for anything in the plot at that one time. He'll often go over, like, one side of the argument, then he'll go over to the other side of the argument. Like, in the political chicanery that I was talking about earlier, he'll often talk to himself, like an internal monologue, about how, you know, one side is doing this one thing, the other side is doing this other thing, and then he'll often get, like, corrected by someone on how someone was doing this third thing, or how he was wrong about that. And there are just all these conversations back and forth between different people with their different perspectives really helps him grow as a character. And it is actually, it is quite nice to see him learning, and it's quite nice to see him just, you know, taking advantage of the advice imparted onto him by everybody. This comes at a cost, though, and this isn't a cost that I don't like docking them points for this, mainly because it's such a little thing, and it absolutely makes sense to do it, and it did help me out more than it hindered my enjoyment of the story. But every single time they say something which could be called back to, like, someone else's line from earlier in the plot, flashback. The amount of flashbacks in this game can't be counted on, like, the hands of 3 different people. It can seriously get annoying when they pop into another flashback of a scene they've already flashed back to twice in the last couple of hours. And it's just weird. Like, you would hope that they would get some of these lines in their head at some point, but it does work, because every time they call back to another line being said earlier on in the story, it absolutely makes sense to jump back and do exactly that. It's just a bit overwhelming, the amount of bloody flashbacks there are in the game, and it just goes to show, again, how far they actually managed to work the plot into the story, how they managed to give everyone as many meaningful lines as possible. The fact that they can keep calling back to those lines makes it just a lot more, it just makes it a lot more believable as a plot, I suppose, that he'd be drawing advice from things that he heard way back in the plot. But at the same time, you do get to spend a lot of time in his head. You do get to go along with him and think, oh, this thing might be like this thing, but then no, it turns out it's this thing, and it all makes sense because you're seeing it from the point of view of someone who's about in the know as you are, which I know is a pretty obvious storytelling quality, but they do a really good job of pulling it off here, making you feel like that you're learning along the way what the hell is going on with the place. And of course, there's room for a few expectations as well to be basically just crushed and thrown away, because I remember from the previous video that I said that I knew what the twist was going to be, and I was 100% wrong on what the twist was going to be. I guessed it about 5 minutes before they actually told me that specific twist, but I got to admit, I did not see it coming for the majority of the game, and they did a good job at absolutely wiping the floor with what I thought was going to happen. Although, admittedly, there was a lot of, what am I talking about? A lot of, God, my brain won't work with me today. There was a lot of foreshadowing as to what was actually going on, and that makes it, that is absolutely fine. Like, I'm happy having my expectations crushed when I realized, oh, that's why that was that, and that was that, and yada 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 yada. And yeah, everything in the game is like that. You get an absolute ton of time to go over the consequences of everything and what's going on and all that. And it makes us for some really interesting characters. Everybody's got their own personal demons to go through, and everybody does get their own character development and their own just general moments of being able to turn and face people and tell them what they need to hear. Other people turning and saying, I'm strong enough to get through this. I have conquered my demons, in not such fancy English. And the best character in the entire game is actually Yuko, which is weird. That was not the character I was expecting to be the most interesting in the entire game. But there you go. She actually turned out to be one of the most interesting people in the entire bloody game, because the amount of moral quandaries and the amount of things that she has to do, which no normal person would want to do normally, in her fight against the thing that is causing her entire race to risk extinction. It makes her the most interesting character to watch, because you never know what exactly she's doing, and she's always got 2 or 3 extra plans up her sleeve. And it makes her the most interesting character to follow around by far, which is great because you spend most of the game with her. And they are not afraid to pull punches on, we'll call it sensitive subject matter, because there are 2 scenes. There are 2 scenes that are mentioned in the Muv-Luv community. I saw the names of both of them back when I was looking up when it was safe to start Alternative, and their names are Chomp and Twizzlers. And yes, they are both about as bad as you might expect. And by bad, I mean bad as in, like, not the sort of, moral guardian bad, but the holy shit, what are they doing to these poor girls bad. And yes, they are really quite horrible. They are both meant to make you feel some sort of hatred towards the beta, and they did an absolutely fantastic job of that. It is certainly something else, especially the Twizzlers scene. And they go into detail, like seriously. The fact that it's so close to being 18 plus only that I'm kind of surprised that it got through even with the censors that they made. And I can imagine that the alternative 18 plus patch on Steam is going to get a few odd looks, if it ever comes out on there at least. Excuse me. And it just... I'm trying to say what the scenes are while not spoiling what the scenes are, because it's really not something that you want to be spoiled on, but at the same time, yeah, go in and don't expect to be treated lightly. Expect to see the full consequences of dealing with an enemy that doesn't think that you're human, that doesn't think that you're a living life form with any sort of, like, hopes, dreams, wishes, just general life. Don't be prepared for the game to, like, pull back a punch on taboo topics. I'm just going to say that much. It really is quite something. So, yeah, what else is there for me to talk about? Well, the entire last 2 episodes do really take on a somber tone as well, and that's where the game is probably at its best. Humanity, like, alright, humanity has its back against the wall the entire time, but it's even more desperate by the end. You can tell that it's working its way up to the very end of the game, and it is heart-wrenching. They do a lot of stuff in those last 2 episodes that make it so that it's just really hard to continue, because if you've been playing the game up to this point, you've probably developed some sort of connection to these characters, because you get plenty of time just to sit around and talk with most of them. You get time to talk to every character you meet in the game. There's a squad of characters who don't get introduced until about halfway through, and you still get plenty of time to spend with them before any sort of, like, action goes down. And you start feeling for all of them. You get an idea of who they all are, and every time one of them loses, it's horrifying. It's horrible. And it makes you miss them. Like, you legitimately, like, I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but there was a character who barely stuck around for like 3 to 4 hours worth of game time. And even with, like, that character eventually making her exit from the plot, we'll put it that way, there's a hole there. It's missing. There's something missing. You got the opportunity to talk to this character even though they weren't around for very long, and it still feels really sad when they go. They've done an amazing job with that, and it keeps building up and building up and building up, and you keep losing people, and you keep thinking, oh god, where is it going to end? Why does it not stop? Nothing feels unearned, by the way. It's not like they're killing off characters just for the fun of it. They come up with, like, it feels natural. The flow of the story all the way through to the final conflict absolutely feels natural, just overall. And I have to give some props to them for even making, like, the grunts. Like, there are some grunts in this game who you get to see a lot of as well, and they get killed as well. They very clearly get killed. You see a face of a familiar character being held up by an enemy, and it's like, oh god, what did you do to him? He didn't deserve that, you stupid bastard. Yeah, can you tell I'm still a little bit emotionally unstable from playing this game? But yeah, I also get to give some props to the bloody Discord. I also got to give some props to the voice actors. The entire game is pretty good with its voice acting, but the last two chapters really kick it into high gear, and everybody feels like they're on their game in the last couple of chapters, and it really does make you feel bad for these people when they do eventually meet their end. And oh boy, the ending. How do I talk about the ending? Well, a lot of people actually had a problem with the ending. Like, I was Googling the achievement guide to help me remember where certain things were in certain parts of the story while I was writing up this little script I got on my screen here. And a lot of people said they weren't very happy with the ending. And I'm thinking to myself, what is this people's problem? Like, the ending comes exactly as a way that might be expected. It absolutely makes sense given the context of the story. And it is absolutely despair-filled, but at the same time, you get to move on to the epilogue. And the epilogue is amazing. Like, I don't mean to spoil it. I'm gonna have to spoil it, but so yeah, there's your warning. I will try and leave like a skip to this point after you get the spoiler warning in the description or something. But anyway. So, the epilogue is more or less, he goes back to the original Muv-Luv, or specifically Muv-Luv Extra, but a few new characters get to show up. You get to see Bunny Ears Girl, you get to see, Maya's sister, you get to see a couple of the, other people who showed up throughout the game, and it basically, it kind of teases you with the prospect of basically going through the original Muv-Luv again, just with a bunch of new people to, you know, like, celebrate it. And I will give them a lot of credit. After having gone through the fight in Muv-Luv Unlimited and Muv-Luv Alternative, coming back to the original Muv-Luv, which I said was, like, in my first video on this series, I said was absolute weed trash, it gave me one hell of an appreciation for it. Like, after having seen all these poor people give up everything to see if they could try and save humanity, after having seen that, being able to go back and play through the initial part of the game again with its off-kilter humor and ridiculous situations and wonderful, wacky cast of characters, it really gives you an appreciation for the original Muv-Luv. And the funny thing is, the situation where it's basically Muv-Luv Extra again, but with a bunch of extra characters, that actually got made. Like, it is actually a thing. There is, like, it's not so much a fourth Muv-Luv game, or a third, if you want to count Extra and Unlimited as one title. But there is this collection of Muv-Luv titles called, I've got it written down here, hang on, Photon Flowers. And Photon Flowers is a collection of, like, side stories, and one of these side stories is like a 15-hour VN that is basically a retelling of Extra with all the new characters on top. And it's coming to PC in the near future. As a matter of fact, the one reason why it's not out now is because all the development time of the team that was working on Muv-Luv was actually being put towards the Vita port. So now that the Vita ports are out, they can get back to work on that. And I tell you one thing, I'm going to be buying Photon Flowers as soon as it comes out on Steam. As far as I can tell, it's not actually planned for Vita, which kind of makes it bittersweet, because you get this little tease at the end that there might be more to it, and then it just doesn't turn out to be, at least not on Vita anyway. I mean, you could go and get it on Steam, and that's what I plan on doing. I have a GPD Win 2 now, so at least I can play it while I'm lying in bed, but it just... yeah, it's just a little bit depressing. It kind of feels like, you know, I don't want to wait for Photon Flowers. I want to be able to play Photon Flowers now, damn it. But yeah, one last thing, just for, you know, whatever reason I feel need to bring it up after I just said that I really want to play the bloody sequel to this. But for whatever reason, the game doesn't render special characters properly. I know I said that it doesn't render commas properly, but for whatever reason, it also doesn't render special letters properly. So, for example, the word deja vu. You know how you've got the weird little umlauts over the top of the E and the A in deja vu? Well, for whatever reason, those don't actually render in the game. So, every time that Takaru says he's having deja vu, and he says it a lot, funnily enough, it's hard to imagine him. It's hard to not imagine him spinning records on a turntable. It just feels weird, because every time it just says DJ Vu. I don't know why. That really should have been picked out in the first beta test. That actually did happen in the original game as well, but I forgot to bring it up in both my other videos. So yeah, there you go. It doesn't beat out Utawara Ramono, it doesn't beat out Zero Escape, it doesn't beat out Steins Gate for me personally, but as like an upgrade, as a move on to this game after you're done with all those other games for when you've beaten them, the story is well justified, highly detailed, and it is a great thriller. You never know what's going to be around the next corner. The character cast is excellent, and it's a lot of fun watching them all grow, and it's also just heartbreaking when they do eventually leave the plot. It's well presented and acted, minus a few weird oddities here and there, and it takes a while to get to the good stuff. Once you have gotten over the hump, that is like Muv-Luv, and then, you know, a little bit less with Muv-Luv Unlimited. Once you've gotten over them, Muv-Luv Alternative has the ability to paint the rest of the series, and especially the original Muv-Luv, in a positive light after it's done, which is actually amazing. I'm not entirely sure how they pulled that one off, but they did. And it's a really good game. It's a really good series, and I highly recommend it. If you want a really quick rundown of how you're meant to run through these games, you go through Muv-Luv Extra, you buy Muv-Luv Extra, you go through Muv-Luv Extra, and you beat Sumika and Keia's routes. Then you get a trophy that says Unlimited. And once you've got the Unlimited trophy, you can move on to Muv-Luv Unlimited. Once you play through Muv-Luv Unlimited once, you're pretty much good to go, because all the other endings are pretty much identical, except with what girl you end up with at the end. And then you have the ability to go straight onto Alternative. And I fully recommend that you do. I absolutely recommend that you do. I'm a little bit disappointed I put out that Blue Maxima's top 100 games 2018 addendum when I did, because, well, I should have had access to Muv-Luv and Muv-Luv Alternative before I even made that video, and I would have put that on there straight away. That would have gone straight on there. That would have gone into that video without question. Muv-Luv and Muv-Luv Alternative. So, there you go. That was one hell of a ride. That was absolutely one hell of a ride, and I do not regret going on it in the slightest. I'm really looking forward to the full translation of Photon Flowers with what is basically the game's extended epilogue. And, well, you could ask for them to bring the Vita port of Photon Flowers over, or even just the part, which is basically just the extended epilogue. But, yeah. Really good shit. I highly recommend it. If you enjoyed Steins Gate, Zero Escape, Danganronpa, Utawara Ramono, any visual novel like that, you owe it to yourself to give Muv-Luv Unlimited and Muv-Luv Alternative a shot. Absolutely. 100% without question. As I said, I wouldn't put it like at the very top of the leaderboards, but I see why it's there, and it's a well-earned position, so there you go. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.